Today, we're going to dive into a pretty cool framework called modular meta-reasoning. Now, what is it? Well, it's a powerful way to test almost any claim about the world, and it all starts with one simple, unbreakable rule.
I know what you're thinking, right? How can one simple rule be powerful enough to check almost any claim you can think of? It sounds a little too good to be true, but that's the big question we're going to tackle today.
So here's our game plan. We'll start with this new way of reasoning and its foundation, what's called the absolute premise. Then we'll get to the fun part, breaking that premise into modules, showing you how to fill them up with real-world stuff, and finally, putting this whole system to the test. So let's jump right in. What exactly is this modular meta-reasoning thing? Think of it this way. This method isn't about getting lost in complex logic puzzles. Nope. Instead, it anchors everything to one single, unbreakable, and universally true principle. The whole idea is to start with a truth that is rock solid and then see if other claims can actually hold up against it. And that rock solid, unbreakable foundation, that's what we call the absolute premise. So what makes an absolute premise so special? Well, it's a statement that is always true, no exceptions, everywhere, all the time. The cool part is you only need this one statement to test all sorts of other claims. You don't need any other supporting arguments. And for our explainer, we're going to use the perfect example of an absolute premise. Output cannot exceed input. It sounds so simple, but it's a really profound and universal truth, right? You just can't get more out of something than what you put into it. Now, this brings us to the really clever part, the modular part of modular meta-reasoning. We're going to take that absolute rule and basically chop it up into flexible, reusable pieces. And you know what? The process is beautifully simple. You just start with your absolute premise, you figure out its essential parts, and then you separate those parts into their own distinct little modules. And boom, this is exactly what it looks like. Our premise, output cannot exceed input, gets broken down into 3 separate modules. Now, the best way to think about these is like empty boxes or containers. We've got a container for the output, one for the input, and a third that defines the unchangeable rule between them, cannot exceed. These are our building blocks. Okay, so we have our abstract, empty containers. Now it's time to make them actually useful by filling in the blanks. This right here is the secret sauce to the whole method. Each module we just made, output cannot exceed an input, is basically a variable. It's just an empty placeholder waiting for us to plug in a real-world concept we want to check out. This is a perfect illustration of how that works. Let's say we want to test a claim about tea. Simple. We just fill our modular boxes. The output box gets a gallon of tea. The input box gets 1 cup of tea. And that rule in the middle, cannot exceed, that stays fixed. And just like that, we've translated a real-world claim into our logical framework. Okay, we've built our framework, we've filled our boxes, now let's put it to the test with some actual claims. So here it is, side by side. On the left, our absolute rock-solid premise. Output cannot exceed input. On the right, the claim we're testing. You can pour a gallon of tea from a single teacup. So, does the claim violate the premise? Well, the answer is immediate and pretty obvious. The claim is instantly falsified. It's a hard no. Why? Because it directly smashes into our unbreakable rule. A gallon, which is our output, absolutely cannot come from a single cup, our input. The logic is just airtight. Okay, that was an easy one. But what about a more complex claim? This is where things get really interesting. Take a look at this question. Can one single seed become a huge tree loaded with fruit? Let's apply our framework one more time. Let's break this down with our modules. The output box gets a large tree plus many fruits. The input box gets just 1 seed. Now, clearly, the output is way, way bigger than the input. So does that mean the claim is false? No. And this is the cool part. Our premise still holds, and what it actually proves is that other inputs must exist. The framework forces us to account for all the other stuff. Like water, sunlight, and soil. It reveals the hidden requirements of the system. And that powerful insight right there brings us to our conclusion, the amazing power you get from using just one core principle as your reasoning toolkit. The entire power of this whole framework really comes back to this one simple idea. It all starts with just one single foundational principle. So ultimately, by taking one absolute truth and making it modular, you create this incredibly versatile tool that can be applied to just about countless real-world scenarios. It's a super efficient way to cut through all the noise and get right to the logical core of any claim. And that leaves us with one last thought to take away. We used output cannot exceed input. But what other truly absolute premises can you think of? What other foundational rules could you break down into modules to start testing the world around you? Definitely something to think about. Thanks for watching.